Father's Day is right around the corner, folks, this Sunday, June 19th. So, the bad news is that if you have not found a gift yet, you are running out of time. But the good news is that my Almost Midlife Crisis has a new partnership with Amazon that brings special deals and promotions specifically to our listeners. I'm so excited about it. So, go to myalmostmidlifecrisis.com, click on the deals and promotions tab, and you will see a bunch of options that are great gifts for dad, whether it's a smart meat thermometer or a smartwatch, Under Armour apparel, Ray-Ban sunglasses, like you name it. There's some great things there that not only can you get a special promo and discount on, but you also can get it delivered before Father's Day. So go today, go check it out, take advantage of these deals, and have a fabulous Father's Day. Well, hello there, and welcome to my Almost Midlife Crisis, the show that dives into that tricky time in our lives when we're no longer young, but we aren't old yet either. That's for sure. I'm your host, Jennifer Villamil. Today, we're talking about being pregnant at 39, or what the medical community calls a geriatric pregnancy. Yeah, that's a fun little label. And it's true. And it's definitely brought to you by a bunch of male doctors, I'm sure, because I cannot imagine a female coming up with that term. I am currently in my second trimester, and I'm turning 40 and will be 40 before my little girl, yep, that's right, girl, is born. And I have to say, being pregnant later in life, I mean, obviously has its risks, like from a health perspective, but maybe it has some unintended rewards. I'd really like to dive into my pregnancy journey in hopes that some of you will be able to relate. So let's get started. For those of you that listened to last season, you know that I was an almost middle-aged bride this past July in 2021. I was supposed to get married in May 2020. But then the global pandemic hit, and well, like a lot of couples all around the world, our plans had to change. So we moved our wedding back not once, not twice, but trace times. First, it was August 2020 because I think we were a lot more optimistic about this whole COVID thing at first. And then we pushed it back to May 2021. And we actually had a non-related COVID calendar conflict that forced us to move it one more time because we were like, why not? If we're going to move it again, now's the time to do it. So we moved it to July 2021. And every time we moved it back, it was really hard because at one point, it honestly felt like it was never going to happen. But really what also made it hard was that for me, it wasn't just pushing back the wedding. It meant pushing back our attempt to conceive and start a family of our own. You know, we could have been one of those couples that had the Zoom wedding and then we had the reception maybe later or at some point. But I waited almost 40 years to get married to begin with. So when we got engaged 8 years in, we really wanted this celebration with our friends and our family. We didn't want to settle. We wanted our big day. And it didn't make it easier that some of our closest loved ones had to travel from not only around the US, but actually out of the country in order to attend. So we wanted to make sure that if we were going to push it back, it gave it the best chance for them to attend, but do it safely. So each time we pushed it back, we were hoping that we would have a better chance of those that were at the top of our list to be able to travel to witness our special day with us. And at the same time, I was becoming increasingly concerned that these delays would potentially make or break our ability to have children. When we got engaged, I would have gotten married at 37. Our first couple shifts would have put me at 38, and moving it to July 2020 or 2021 meant that I would be almost 39. And while any of these options qualified me for a geriatric pregnancy, for some reason, I just had it in my head that I had to get pregnant before 40 if I wanted a chance of natural conception. I had no idea. I have no idea. I'm not a doctor. And I don't think this is true because I know there are women that are over 40 that conceive naturally. But for whatever reason, this is the timeline that I had in my head that I needed to work under. So let's talk about the geriatric pregnancy. First of all, the name sucks. Okay. Seriously. Like, could we not have come up with a better name at any point? Like, we had to use an adjective that literally means old people, like FU medical community. Okay. Maybe use a little EQ next time you come up with a name. But the unfortunate reality is that it's called a geriatric pregnancy because your age brings increased pregnancy risks, like similar to that of old people and their health care. They say that starting in your 40s, when you have aches and pains, your doctor just starts saying, like, well, that's a part of aging. And they just like give up because you're getting older and your body is just like breaking down. Well, that's pretty much a geriatric pregnancy. The older a woman gets, the more things just don't work as well that they would have back in her 20s. So, for example, you have less viable eggs to begin with, and your body has been consistently releasing non-fertilized eggs since your first period. And fun fact, I learned during my journey, geriatric pregnancies are more likely to have multiples like twins or triplets, not just because at that age, people are more likely to use things like IVF, but because your body is literally increasing the rate in which it's releasing or getting rid of eggs. So basically, your ovaries are just like giving up on the possibility of having children. And there's like this clearance sale of eggs from your body, like stores closing, everyone, like everything must go. Like you get an egg, you get an egg. Like they're just getting rid of it. And the chances of miscarriages increases by 20 to 30%. Your chance of birth defects increase dramatically every single year. So for example, if you're 20, which honestly is too young to have kids, but if you're 20, your risk of having a baby with Down syndrome is 1 in 2,000, which honestly is still a lot higher than I would have expected, if I'm being honest. At 35, so just 15 years, that jumps to 1 in 350. At 40, it's 1 in 100. And at 45, it's 1 in 30. Ugh. So women have more of a chance of not only Down syndrome, but other fun side effects like gestational diabetes or blood clots, or more of a chance of a C-section or hypertension, all because our bodies aren't in their prime anymore. Thank you for the reminder, by the way. And we have had a harder time bouncing back because our metabolism has slowed since our 20s, and it's harder for us to lose weight in general. So listen, I get it. You're like, wow, thanks. Especially if you're where I'm at and you are thinking about starting a family. You're like, shut the F up. You're just giving me a bunch of bad news. Like, but before you click end and stop listening, I feel the same way. It is a scientific fact, so we have to know it and we have to deal with it. But it's not all bad. Okay, it is not all bad. There are multiple studies that have shown that older moms tend to be better educated for obvious reasons, and have higher incomes because they've been in their career longer, and therefore can provide better resources for their children. So that's a plus. Okay. It's also shown that older moms tend to live longer. Okay. Now there's a real benefit. We tend to live longer. And the children, this is one of my favorites, the children of older moms may end up healthier, more well-adjusted, and better educated. I mean, don't shoot the messenger, okay, for those of you that didn't wait. I'm just reporting what the studies have shown. But you know what? That's pretty good. Like that's solid right there. That's some solid information. It makes me feel a lot better than what I was talking about prior. So after waiting until 39 to get married, we started trying right away. Hell, I mean, I was taking prenatals like 6 months before the wedding, just to prepare, because I read some article online that it helps you, that if you're over 35, it helps you have a healthier pregnancy if you start your prenatals early, which, like, again, I'm not a doctor, but that's what I did. I was like, you know what? Fine, I'll start taking them. Like, also, it can't really hurt just to get some extra vitamins. Like, why not? The ironic thing is that it wasn't until my mid 30s I even was sure that I wanted a kid at all. Like, I'd gone back and forth pretty much my whole life. And it wasn't until I actually thought that I might be pregnant at one point, my mindset totally changed. And for the first time, I took a pregnancy test. And instead of that, like when it's negative, like normally during your life, when it's negative, you're like, like, thank God. Like, I don't want a kid. This was the first time that I actually felt this like ping of disappointment when it was negative. And it was a shock to me. Like, I was surprised at my reaction, especially considering it was days before we were supposed to go to Argentina, and half the trip was actually dedicated to wine country in Mendoza. So being pregnant would have really put a damper on that trip that I was so looking forward to. But I was sad. And that realization kind of, that maybe I did want that option of having a kid, made me go to a fertility clinic to just get some testing done and like see where I was at. And in my mind, I was thinking, you know what? I'm going to freeze my eggs because I want to have kids at some point, but maybe like this second isn't the best time, which like really is any time the best time, like really. But I was like, I'm going to go freeze my eggs. So after all the tests, the doctor said that, in order to freeze my eggs over the age of 35, she would recommend 2 rounds. Okay. And what this means, because that's like, oh, that's not bad. Like 2 rounds. What does that mean? Well, that means 2 rounds at 6 months each. So a year of my life of getting my blood checked at the doctor multiple times a week, of not working out for the whole year, of giving myself 365 injections with a needle. Yeah. And you know what? This girl who works out 5 to 6 days a week for not just my physical health, it's for my mental sanity. I wouldn't be able to work out for a whole year. Oh, and this girl who can't even look at a needle at the doctor, like can't even look at it. I completely am just like looking the other way. I would need to stick it in myself every day. Oh, and by the way, all of this would cost about $20,000 to $30,000 because none of it was covered by my insurance. And after all that, after a year of going through all of that, to use the eggs, that's just to freeze the eggs, okay? Then to use them, we would need to do IVF, which also is mostly not covered by my insurance and could cost up to an average of $18,000 per cycle in Illinois, where I live. And after all of that, there is no guarantee that I could actually even get pregnant. So you can do all of that and you still might not be pregnant. Like, wow, I was not expecting all of this. Like, I remember leaving the doctor's office in the cab and I was just crying. I was so frustrated because for the first time, I felt the weight of this decision to have kids. I was now starting to feel the full impact of my decision to focus on my career and my relationship ahead of kids. And it made me angry that this pressure even exists. Angry that if I wanted to give myself the insurance of frozen eggs, all of this would come at my expense, both I'm not just talking about money, because, Christian would have obviously split it with me. I'm talking about physical and mental, just toll that this whole process would take on me. That would all fall on me. The impact of hormones in my body and that impact on my mind, the negative physical and mental consequences of removing fitness from my life, which sounds really small. Like, if in a way, I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh, like, hell yeah, I have like a doctor's note to like get out of the gym for the next year. But Christian and I are really active people, and we're like always signing up for races, and we're both really consistent with our workout routines. And the idea of watching him continue to be able to do these physical challenges when I just have to sit on the sidelines honestly made me truly concerned that I would be jealous. Like, having to go through all of this and then potentially never actually be able to conceive made me concerned that I might come to resent this man that I love. Like, resent him for waiting so long to get married when honestly I was ready to earlier. After a lot of thought and a lot of discussions, we decided together, we're like, you know what, this is not our journey. This isn't how we're going to do it. And instead, we were going to give it our best shot to get pregnant naturally. And if that didn't work, then maybe it just wasn't meant to be. So once we got married, I was ready to start. I was like, ring on finger, let's get going. I had been taking my prenatals. I had multiple apps on my phone that help track my ovulation. Like, why do you need more than one? Like, one is fine. I had multiple. I was cutting down on my drinking. Like I would pretty much drink until I was ovulating. And then once I was ovulating for like the 2 weeks between ovulation and if you find out you're pregnant, like I would like almost not drink, or I would drink very little. I was doing like all the things that I could do just to give myself like the best chance, just the best chance that I possibly could. But each month when I would get my period, I would feel this like little sense of failure. Like, why was it hard? Like, as a woman, our whole lives, we are taught that if you have sex, you're going to get pregnant. Like, at any point, anytime, sex equals pregnancy. And well, first of all, I call bullshit on that. Bullshit. Like, why weren't we told the truth when we were growing up? It's not whenever you have sex. In reality, there's like this small window of 3 to 5 days tops. And outside of that, you pretty much are in the clear. It's like a 1% chance. The chances are super low. My whole life, getting my period gave me this like sigh of relief that I wasn't pregnant. And now, for the first time, it gave me concern that what if my parents were right this whole time? Like, let's face it, as an elder millennial, having your parents right is one of the worst consequences I could imagine. Like, what if they were right that I should have prioritized my personal life over my career? What if they were right that I waited too long to start a family? What if my past choices were now going to prevent me from having a future I only realized that I even wanted just recently? And the scariest part, I didn't have all the time in the world. Our time actually is limited. And for the first time in my life, I felt that pressure, the pressure of time. But with each month, we did our best, like we promised each other, right? And in early November, my apps, the multiple apps, started pinging me on my screen and asking me, like, have you gotten your period? Like, you should check. Did you get your period yet? Because according to their algorithm, I was late. So I took a test and it was positive. And I could not believe it. Like, I really, like, it was the first time in my life I had seen a positive pregnancy test, like with my own eyes. And I did not believe that it was true. So I took another one and that was positive too. So I waited all day because I wanted to tell Christian when he was in person. I didn't want to like text him that I'm pregnant. So when he came home from work, I told him I like saw this thing on TikTok where you can like have this little like hand, I don't know what you call it, like little origami thing. Like, do you remember when you were in school and it would like you could do it? I wanted to, I'm not explaining it well, but I wanted like some sort of puzzle for him to kind of like figure out. So I settled on, instead of the origami thing, I like wrote on my hand or like stuck a piece of paper in my pocket, and it was like, okay, turn over my hand, and then on the inside of your hand it would say, okay, now like look at the top of my left hand, and then it would, do that, and then it would say look at my back pocket, and he was like, what are you doing? And of course, like on my face, it was like, something's up, right? Plus, I'm like trying to record it. It wasn't even like a good recording. So we do all of that, and I tell him that I'm pregnant, and we went out to dinner to celebrate, and we're talking about the nursery and like, is it going to be a boy or girl, and like what sports would we put them in, and we were just so thrilled and excited. And that was until 3 days later when I started spotting, and the next day I had my period. Like, what had just happened? I was so confused and I was crushed. Like, did I just miscarry? I saw our dream just like slip away, and we only got to relish in it for like a couple days. So I went to the doctor and they told me that I had a chemical pregnancy. I'm sorry, what the hell is that? Like, seriously, never in my life have I heard about a chemical pregnancy. Never. And for those of you that are also in the dark on this phenomenon, it's when your egg is fertilized and becomes an embryo, but you lose it within the first 5 weeks. What makes a chemical pregnancy is that because you have an embryo, you start producing the pregnancy hormone, which is what gives you a positive test, but it ends really early before there's ever a fetus. And a lot of times it actually never implants in your uterus. So according to my doctor, apparently these are like super common, and to the point where most women don't even realize they had one because it happened so fast. They just think that they had a period start a couple days late. But if you're trying and you're using home tests, you're more likely to know because you're testing early, and at-home tests are actually very accurate, which I guess is a good thing because we want accuracy when we're taking these things. But in a way, the idea that this is so common was helpful, but the loss of what could have been still hurt. And what helped me get through it was hope, because prior to this, honestly, I was scared that I couldn't even get pregnant, that it just was impossible. But to me, this was my way of my body almost like making it past the first step. Like, we created an embryo. Okay, so my body and his sperm were capable of producing an embryo. So that's step one. But through the use of like condoms and birth control, like I had been telling my body not to do this for like 20 years. So it made sense that my uterus needed maybe like a practice run before the real deal. Like, you don't go to a marathon without training, right? So to me, this was my body like training for the real deal. So this time it was an embryo. Next time, maybe a baby. At least that was like what I hoped. So when I got my period in January, it was officially 6 months without any success. So I talked to my doctor and we got a prescription for Clomid, which is like this pill that helps women get pregnant. And I'm not a doctor, but apparently it helps increase your ovulation and makes your ovulation timing like super exact. So you increase your chance of conception. And it's most commonly used for women over 35 and has seen a lot of success. So now the trick is that there's this very specific process in which you use this pill, and our schedule in February just like wasn't going to work. Christian was headed for Israel for like 2 weeks for school, like right at the time I would be ovulating. So we decided we were going to wait till March to give it a try, but I had it ready, was ready to go. But that was okay. Because I actually had accepted a new position for work, and I was starting the one that I got laid off of like that I talked about last episode. Yeah, that one. And I was starting the first week in February. So that month I was going to be busy anyway. So I had resigned from my previous role back in December and taken a month off before I started my new position just to like get my head right. And I'd been burnt out and stressed like half the population. And it seems like I just, you know what, I just needed a break. But I was excited to start my new role, and then we would pick up trying to conceive in March. So in the meantime, I was looking forward to giving myself just like a break from even worrying about conception as well, because it had been 6 months of like just this roller coaster ups and downs trying to have a baby. Like you're hopeful that we did our part on the right ovulation days, and then like the 2 weeks of just hopeful waiting game that it worked, and you just hope you did everything right, and then like the disappointment when you find out that it didn't work. So a 2-month break was honestly pretty welcomed prior to starting back up. So that's what we did. We had a planned trip to Charleston in hopes of getting out of the cold weather of Chicago for a couple of days before I started my new gig. And Christian was going to be traveling for 3 out of the next 4 weeks. So after Charleston, I went the next long weekend to Florida with a friend of mine, just to have some fun at my mom's house. So things were great. And while we were in Florida, my friend got her period, and it made me realize that I hadn't started mine. And I mean, I had an abnormal period in January, so I didn't really think much of it. But when we got home, I just like kept waiting for it to start, but it didn't. So Christian came home from a Miami trip, and I still hadn't gotten it. So I took a test, and it was positive. But this time we didn't jump for joy. Not like the first time. We were cautious. We were both kind of scared to get too excited in the event that like back in November, it didn't last long. So we held in our excitement, and we just decided to wait like a couple more days to see if it stuck this time. So a couple days later, I took another test, and it was positive. 2 days after that, I had previously scheduled doctor's appointments. So while I was there, I was like, hey, let's multitask. Could I get a blood test? And it was positive again. So it was official. I was pregnant. But the thing that people don't talk about during those initial weeks of pregnancy is how lonely it can be, especially after your husband leaves for 2 weeks, only 3 days after your positive blood test. Because I found out at like 5 weeks that I was pregnant, and we had a full 4 weeks to go until our first prenatal exam. And those 4 weeks were pretty much torture. It was too early to tell people that we were pregnant, because honestly, we were just scared that we would have to tell them we had a miscarriage later. But I was definitely feeling pregnant. I had all the symptoms. I had crazy fatigue that I really could only describe like this. Like, do you remember when you used to watch Tom and Jerry, and Tom would get so tired, he would try like different methods to keep his eyes open. So like he would try to like tape them open like this, or he would like hold them up with toothpicks. Like that was me. I would be fine 1 minute, and then out of nowhere, all of a sudden my eyes were so tired, I physically could not keep them open. I was nauseous all the time. And thankfully, I only threw up once. But if I wasn't eating, essentially, I was nauseous. I was so constipated, maybe TMI, but that was the worst symptom at all, because I was so constipated that I had stomach pains, which were so bad one night, I actually was like convinced I had to go to the ER. And through all of this, I was home alone and spending all day on video conferences in my new job, which had like a video on culture. So I'm sure my colleagues were puzzled on why there were days that I looked like hell, and that this was, because there were a 3-day span when I felt so bad I couldn't even bring myself to shower. So thank God they could not smell me through the computer, or they would have not appreciated it. Or maybe they were like shocked of just how much I was eating, because like in every single meeting I was eating, and they were like, Jesus, like this chick needs to calm down. The hardest part was the excruciatingly long wait for that first prenatal appointment. I desperately wanted just a doctor to look at me and reassure me that everything looked great. I was so hesitant to allow myself to just get too excited until I at least made it to the first appointment. And what I didn't realize was my hesitancy would not be eliminated at that first appointment. There would be more hurdles to come. It has been a journey to get to this point. I had feelings of anger and frustration after going to the fertility doctor. I was hit in the face with the harsh reality that my time was not unlimited. I feared that I had waited too long and prioritized in a way that would prevent me from this next step. I was terrified that my parents' warnings all these years were valid, and I should have listened to them earlier. Even if it was just for a few days, I experienced the feeling of loss from a chemical pregnancy. But here I was, 39 and naturally pregnant. I realize how lucky I am to not have need supplements or IVF to get here, and I am so thankful. While 6 months felt like a lifetime, in reality, that's quick, especially for my age. We were one of the lucky ones. My hope now is that our luck continues as we navigate through this geriatric pregnancy. Ugh, I still cannot say it without cringing. We seriously need a new name. Thank you so much for listening. Please rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Join me on my social channels to get more content and inspiration. And you can follow my Almost Midlife Crisis on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also check out my new YouTube channel with videos of the episodes and shorts to keep you entertained all week. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to make sure that you are always up to date on the latest episodes, and sign up to get the written transcripts delivered right to your inbox at myalmostmidlifecrisis.com. Until next time. It has been a journey to get to this point. I had feelings of anger and frustration after going to the fertility doctor. I was hit in the face with the harsh reality that my time was not unlimited. I feared that I had waited too long and prioritized in a way that would prevent me from this next step. I was terrified that my parents' warnings all these years were valid, and I should have listened to them earlier. Even if it was just for a few days, I experienced the feeling of loss from a chemical pregnancy. But here I was, 39 and naturally pregnant. I realize how lucky I am to not have need supplements or IVF to get here, and I am so thankful. While 6 months felt like a lifetime, in reality, that's quick, especially for my age. We were one of the lucky ones. My hope now is that our luck continues as we navigate through this geriatric pregnancy. Ugh, I still cannot say it without cringing. We seriously need a new name. Thank you so much for listening. Please rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Join me on my social channels to get more content and inspiration. And you can follow my Almost Midlife Crisis on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also check out my new YouTube channel with videos of the episodes and shorts to keep you entertained all week. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to make sure that you are always up to date on the latest episodes, and sign up to get the written transcripts delivered right to your inbox at myalmostmidlifecrisis.com. Until next time.